How's it going, folks? Stu here. Fancy another film from the London Film Festival to talk about today? Well, you don't have a choice, because I saw far too many. And today's film is one which I almost missed at the festival, but I'm incredibly grateful that things just happened to line up timing-wise and I managed to check it out because it was one of my more anticipated films of the year. I missed it when it showed at Sundance earlier in the year. That film was Fran Kanz's Mass. Whew! I could leave the review there. So Mass, it's the directorial debut of actor-writer Fran Kanz, who I didn't realise when I saw the film, but is apparently the stoner from Cabin in the Woods, and that doesn't compute even slightly in my head, because this one is a hugely emotional, deeply moving look at two couples coming to terms with the aftermath of a school shooting. And yes, it is absolutely as emotionally devastating as you can imagine from the sound of that synopsis. Good Lord. This film kind of battered my soul a little bit. I have to apologise if this becomes one of the less sort of joyous and uplifting reviews I've done on the channel. There's no real way to talk about this thing without discussing just how emotionally bruising it is. But where to start with Mass? I mean, Fran Kanz's directorial debut. What a debut. This thing was so confidently delivered in basically every aspect. Right away from the decision to basically have this thing take place in essentially one location with just 4 characters talking. You get the sense that this is a film and that this is a director that knows how to handle the subject at hand, which is incredibly important when it is such a tricky and emotional subject as a school shooting in the aftermath of that. It's restrained and stripped back in a way which only helps to serve the screenplay on hand here and the performances that the entire cast are giving. And that screenplay is one of the most emotionally intelligent I've seen for some time. Honestly, I mean, this sort of topic and these sort of characters being thrown together in a room, you could imagine how a screenwriter would end up falling back on certain platitudes or certain kind of dramatic beats where these ideologies are clashing, and you could imagine it coming off as incredibly obvious and over the top. But Fran Kanz's screenplay is so interestingly and naturally woven together that you almost aren't aware of the emotional weight of some of the things that these characters are talking about until it just sweeps you up and grabs you. It begins with this incredibly nervous atmosphere. I mean, when these characters meet, you just get the sense that things are going to go to a very dark place. And the drama and the emotion of the film really naturally evolves out of that sense of unease and that sense of nervousness in the beginning in a way which I think is so incredibly in tune with the way that people and humans interact with each other in real life. This interaction feels like a genuine interaction. This feels like how these characters would talk in this space if this was happening. And that means that every character in the film obviously has their own different viewpoints and expectations from the meeting that they're in throughout the runtime, but you understand every one of them. You empathize with each of these characters in a way which would have so easily been missed if it had just fallen into these very black and white, good guy, bad guy dramatic scenes, big arguments, people shouting across at each other. And it's helped by stunning performances as well. I mean, look, you're going to hear an insane amount about everyone in this film over the coming months as we go into award season. And rightfully so, everyone just brings it on this film. But my two standouts have to be Jason Isaacs and Ann Dowd, who both ruined me at multiple points in this film in very subtle ways, and I guess in much more, I suppose, obvious ways, but regardless, ruined me. Amazing performances. Jason Isaacs fills this character and this entire role on runtime with this sense of tiredness and weariness, like he's a man that is just at the end of his tether. But I love the way that he doesn't want to rail on people. He doesn't want to immediately let it all out. It's a very reserved character to begin with, but that just makes all of the layers of unraveling that his character does through the film feel much more authentic and impactful. And Jason Isaacs just nails that in a way which never feels cliche, never feels over the top, and always feels real. He was so good. But Ann fucking Dowd. I mean, you know, if you've watched a lot of my videos before, that whenever Ann Dowd's in something, she'll likely be the thing that I'm talking about for a long time afterwards. She's one of my favorite actresses. I've loved her through everything she's done, and she really expertly captures this sort of sincerity, but also almost nervous excitement to her character, I suppose, but in a way which feels very much like a mother, almost trying to hide how she truly feels. And so for a lot of this film, it does feel like we're watching person, very authentically kind of, I guess, hiding parts of herself, but also bearing all. She's definitely one of the most sort of outgoing and forward characters in the piece right from the beginning. The beauty of Ann Dowd's performance here is that, yes, when she's talking and when she's upset, it's incredibly upsetting to see because you don't want to see someone feel like that. But in the way she responds to other characters, in those quiet moments where she's listening, that is where I think a lot of Ann Dowd's performance really does shine. You just feel like you're watching someone coming to terms with something, which is what this character is. It's and what all of these characters are. They're people coming to terms with this insane tragedy. And in that sense, it can feel incredibly cathartic. But I was also really impressed by the way that Fran Kanz deals with trying to wrap this thing up. And I'm obviously not going to spoil what happens or where this film goes, but I was a little bit worried that it would try and tie a bow on things in a way which undermines the authenticity that's been woven throughout this thing up until the ending. And I'm happy to say that it really does a good job of balancing emotions at the end and leaving these characters in a place which feels believable and understandable. And it left me in a place which felt like I couldn't get up from my sofa because I just needed to sit for a while. It's one of those films where the credit rolls and you just left with emotions and feelings, and it's tough. It's a tough watch, I'll be honest, but it's an important watch and is arguably one of the most vital films of the year, especially in a time when I think conversations and arguments can get so heated and snappy, especially online in this kind of you're right, I'm wrong environment that we live in today. A film like this feels so much more powerful because it allows you to watch people dissect and go through a topic and a difficult topic for themselves in an understanding and empathetic way. I will say there's one thing about this film which does bug me. Never enough to truly derail things, but towards the middle of this film, it feels like things hit this sort of crescendo in a way which I found to feel a little bit too theatrical, in a way which felt more obvious than some of the more natural and genuine things we'd seen from the characters and performances at the beginning and at the end of the film. And it's really an aspect of the directing which I think got in the way for me. And it's a very specific thing, maybe it's a nitpick, but it did something for me which I don't think was necessarily its intention. But it's almost as if Fran Kanz begins to decide he wants these characters to move away from the space that they're in. Not the room, but the space. And so the blocking of the film, maybe in an attempt to try and keep things engaging, although I'm not sure why they felt the need to do that because the characters and the performances and the screenplay are as engaging as they need to be anyway. But it's like characters start to have these monologues, and when they're delivering these monologues, they each sort of stand up and do their own thing. And that felt frustratingly theatrical to me in a way which I wasn't kind of expecting from the rest of the film, and it did suck me out a little bit, but thankfully the screenplay was good enough to keep me on board, and actually it did bring me back into it in a really satisfying and emotionally rewarding way. So, but that being said, that's generally the only real big problem I have with this film. It delivers in displaying an emotionally rich, devastating but intelligent look at two couples coming to terms with something fucking horrible. Definitely worth a watch, but definitely one which you need to sort of almost emotionally prepare yourself before you go into it, because this thing will ruin you. But what about you guys? Have you caught Mass yet? It's been showing at a bunch of festivals, getting a lot of buzz wherever it drops. I believe it's out in the UK next year. Not sure. Hopefully it comes sooner than I'm thinking. Whatever you thought about it, let me know in the comments down below. We'll have a little chat. And while you're down there, click subscribe. It means you won't miss any future reviews when they drop on the channel. I'll see you guys soon for some more thoughts on more films. But until next time, I do just need to lie down still. It's been like a week since I watched this film, and I still need to lie down.